Well, energy is also part of the picture when it comes to the conflict with Iran. The country has threatened to shut down the critical Strait of Hormuz, where much of the world's oil passes through. Meanwhile, an article in the New York Times details a leaked U.S. war game. It's a simulation that foreshadows what could happen should Israel launch a strike against Iran. And what played out was a strike leading to an all-out regional war, the U.S. inevitably drawn into the conflict. So what are the real consequences of a war with Iran, and who stands to benefit and who would lose out? Well, to talk more about this, Trita Parsi, founder and president of the National Iranian American Council and author of the book, A Single Roll of the Dice. Welcome to the show, Trita.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start off by talking about oil prices. Republicans are blaming President Obama for the rising prices at the pump. People are getting frustrated. It's costing I saw some reports today, $5 a gallon. But how much does the conflict in Iran have to do with it?
Actually has quite a lot to do with it, and the president is putting the blame right back at the feet of the Republicans. If you took note of the speech that he gave at the APAC conference about 2 weeks ago or so, he really warned against what he called this reckless talk about war, because what that talk is doing is that it's adding a lot of risk premium to the oil prices, which is causing them to rise, which is actually causing the Iranian government to make more money out of the oil that they can sell. So the only losers in this actually would be the president himself. The Republicans don't seem to mind too much that oil prices are rising, because the higher the oil prices go, the more difficult it will be for President Obama to create jobs. And that's going to be the critical variable for his re-election. And obviously the Republicans don't want him to win.
So you think the Republicans, they're in favor of high gas prices at this time because
temporarily they don't seem to have too much.
Obama.
Yeah, temporarily they don't seem to be too bothered by it.
And here is what President Obama had to say today about this topic. Let's take a listen.
The price of oil will still be set by the global market. And that means every time there's tensions that rise in the Middle East, which is what's happening right now, so will the price of gas. The main reason the gas prices are high right now is because people are worried about what's happening with Iran.
So the president is saying, hey, this is not my fault. This is out of my control. He's blaming the turmoil in Iran on the fact that gas prices are rising. What's your reaction to his remarks today?
Well, I think it also adds a lot of pressure to himself to make sure that there is a much more robust and much more persistent effort at diplomacy in order to resolve the conflict with the Iranians over the nuclear issue. And there seems to be now increasing information that says that there will be meetings held sometime in April, and it might be a series of meetings. And if that happens, if the tensions are reduced, two things will happen. It will significantly, if there are ongoing negotiations, it will significantly reduce the chances or the risk of an Israeli military strike. And it will also slowly but surely push down oil prices. That will benefit the president, that will benefit job creation in this country, and he will be able to use that as a major plus. But it will require a lot of political will from his end to make sure that the pressure to make the negotiations fail are pushed back.
And also, people are playing the blame game as to who is responsible for these rising gas prices. But we should mention that really a lot of what's behind it is Wall Street and the way that they're speculating on energy.
That certainly is one factor, but I would say right now it seems like the biggest portion of the oil price right now, the reason why it is at $123 or so, is mainly because of the risk premium and the fear that exists in the market, particularly over the last couple of weeks, that there would be some sort of a clash between Israel and Iran and potentially between the United States and Iran. That causes a lot of panic in the market that so far has pushed up oil prices about $20 or so. If it actually were to lead to a full-scale war, then there are speculation that it could actually reach above 200.
So you're saying that just the fear of the conflict in Iran is leading to gas prices going up.
It certainly is. And I don't think it is a coincidence that the Iranians have been making a lot of bellicose statements, because they want oil prices to go up high. That's a way for them to put pressure back on the West in response to the many sanctions that the West has been imposing on the Iranians.
And in a way, it shows that the sanctions are kind of backfiring, and it's affecting the pocketbooks of every person, every average citizen.
sanctions that bite both ways. So if you have any sanctions that actually do put a lot of pressure on the Iranians, it will also put a lot of pressure on others, including those who impose them.
And I also want to talk about this so-called, it's a U.S. war game. It was a simulation. And basically what this simulation showed is that if Israel were to launch an attack on Iran, that it would lead to this all-out regional war, and that the U.S. would ultimately or inevitably get involved. What can we take away from this simulation?
A couple of things. First of all, it's not a coincidence that it got leaked. There's been an ongoing campaign for the last couple of months in which the U.S. military is leaking information about, A, how dangerous it would be if the Israelis were to attack Iran, how counterproductive it would be, and what it would do to the United States, because it would drag the U.S. into a war that its main objective is really difficult to achieve militarily, if not impossible. So this is a way also for the military to push back and make sure that the politicians, the civilians, don't make a decision that would put the military again at the center of a disaster.
And now, in light of all this, we're seeing how even just the fear of war and this rising tension in the region is not benefiting our economy here in the U.S. Who then would benefit from a conflict with Iran?
Well, from one perspective, one can say that the Netanyahu government seems to be more fearful of a negotiated settlement on the Iranian nuclear issue because of a fear that the U.S. would go with a compromise that would not meet the Israeli red lines. And as a result, they actually seem to be more comfortable with the idea that there would be a military confrontation. But I think that is also a miscalculation of what lies in Israel's interest, because in the long term, a war will not be in Israel's interest either, because it will bring about not only a tremendous amount of turmoil in the region, but also so far, Israel has not had a military confrontation with any of the Middle East's non-Arab states. In fact, between Iran and Israel, over the last 2,500 years, the relations have more often than not been good. It would be a very strong psychological red line if a war were to break out between Israel and Iran.
And lastly, Trita, just want to ask you at this point, how optimistic are you that a diplomatic solution can be reached with Iran?
Well, you know, there's a lot of talk about how difficult this would be, and it would be difficult, but at the same time, this is not the most complex problem that humanity has encountered. It's not the technical aspects of this problem that is difficult, it's the political side of it that is tricky. If there is a significant and sufficient political will to put into place a diplomatic process that is sustainable and persistent, then I do believe that this can be resolved. The problem is that the political will does not seem to be sufficient on all sides at the same time.
All right, Trita, pleasure to have you in the studio. Thank you for coming in. That was Trita Parsi, the founder and president of the National Iranian American Council and author of the book, A Single Roll of the Dice.